Hey everyone, today's episode takes us from the western half of the United States all the way to the far east coast. We start in Wyoming with an insane story from a ranger in Yellowstone whose encounter is described in a way that will send anxieties you didn't know you have down your spine. Next, we head to a warehouse in Burlington County, New Jersey, where two early morning workers see something that forces them to permanently change the way they work. So, while you ponder all the craziness that's about to come your way, please don't forget to subscribe. Great. Now let's get into the stories. It was 2010, and I was working a summer job at Yellowstone National Park. That year, I was helping with conservation work, and this particular week, assigned to trail maintenance. That's when I had my encounter. I clearly remember that it was a hot day and I had decided to take a break by going down to the river and having lunch there. The park is home to many rivers, including the Yellowstone and the Snake Rivers, but my favorite is the Firehole River. This river is also a favorite spot for fly fishing. I also find it interesting that the water runs warmer there, since most of the flow from the park's geysers empties into the river. Overall, I find this section to be beautiful and serene. When I arrived at the river, it wasn't too crowded either, which I was happy about. Mainly because often when you have your park uniform on, you tend to get a bunch of questions from park visitors. Now that's fine because I love helping people, but sometimes it's hard to get your lunch eaten. And on that day, I was starving. So while I was sitting there relaxing and eating, I noticed something moving along the bank on my side of the river. At first it looked like a deer, but then I noticed how low to the ground the thing was moving. I watched as it moved along the bank for about 20 minutes before it stopped and looked right at me, just as if it had known that I was there all along. And this is when my heart started beating faster, and I realized that what I was looking at wasn't anything from around here, like not of this earth. The creature's head was long and narrow, with ears that stuck out in front of its head instead of on top like most animals, at least the animals I'm familiar with. Its eyes were large and dark brown in color, while its nose seemed to be flat against its face instead of sticking out like a snout would do. It sat there for a while, staring at me without making any sounds or movement. I watched as its eyes stayed focused on me, but blinking every 5 seconds or so, which started to make me feel really strange, like it was connecting to me or trying to send a message or something. Eventually, I was able to shake my head and break from our mutual stare, and I decided to try and get a better look at it by moving closer. But as soon as I did that, the thing turned around and ran away. It moved fast, so fast that in just a few seconds it was gone into the grasses along the bank of the river. I then decided to get up and walk over to where it had been standing and look for tracks or anything it might have left behind, but I couldn't find anything. After that, I decided to head back up to the main trail since my break was over and I still had work to do. I started thinking that it was probably just an apparition or something from being tired and hot and hungry, so I just got on with my day. So I got on with life and work, but then a few days later, I had another encounter. This time it happened during the day while I was on patrol in a truck. It was hot and dry that day, so there weren't any clouds to block the sun. While driving along one of the main roads through the park, I noticed strange movements off to the side. It's interesting how you come to instinctively know what's normal and what isn't in the park. I quickly realized that there was an unusual flash of movement from the grasses along the road. I stopped my truck to get a better look and saw that it was one of those creatures crawling on its hands and feet through the grasses. It moved fast, like really fast. It went from one spot to another without ever standing up or running. I sat there watching this thing crawl around for a while before there was this noise and flash of light, and it just disappeared right in front of me. After that, I was on high alert. I was convinced that these creatures were watching over the park, keeping an eye on things, possibly even following me. To be honest, I was starting to get scared that I was losing my mind. I started to see them more often after that, crawling along the roads or moving through the grasses. I didn't say anything about it to anyone because I'm not sure they would have believed me. So I just kept it to myself. It wasn't until recently that I started talking about my experiences with other rangers, and they told me that others have seen these creatures as well. They've nicknamed them the crawlers because of how fast they move on their hands and feet without ever standing up. I'm not sure what they are or where they come from, but I know that I'll never forget the sight of those dark eyes staring at me. I'll never forget how fast they are and how they can disappear before your eyes. So, if you ever go to that park, you just have to keep an eye out for them, because I firmly believe that they will definitely be watching you, too. I got to work late the night that this happened, or actually, it's more accurate to say very early that morning. I get in an hour before everyone else, and it was 5 a.m. on a cold February day in 2017 in Burlington County, New Jersey. When it's late and quiet like that, the parking lot seems like a ghost town. But of course, it's not really abandoned. There are still a few cars here and there, but other employees really don't start coming in until 6 in the morning. Anyway, this early morning shift usually goes by quickly, but the last few nights hadn't passed fast enough. It had nothing to do with how busy we've been, but more due to all the strange things that have been happening around the shop lately. Things missing and windows broken. But we work in a warehouse that gets deliveries all night long, so it's important that someone's there, which means I couldn't call off. Because of all the oddities happening, some of my coworkers even begged me not to come alone, but it's hard to find anyone else willing to work that shift. So there I was, alone again that night, and all their talk honestly had me scared and wondering what fresh hell might await me beyond the big metal doors to the delivery area. It was probably my own paranoia acting up again and all the speculation stories, because there's really no proof of anything really bad happening. Besides a few broken windows, that could be blamed on any number of things, like kids or drunks. Well, then there also was those missing tools, but they never were reported because they're always gone. We're always ordering more, something that I think makes us look incompetent at work. I've always just thought that someone who works here might be stealing them. Anyway, that tingling sensation was coming down my back as I pulled into the parking lot. You know, the kind that hinders you from focusing on anything. I told myself that tonight will be different, though. Tonight will pass quickly because I'll stay busy and nothing will happen. Well, in the end, the night didn't pass any faster than normal, and luckily, everything did seem normal until the incident. Out of the corner of my eye, while on the forklift sorting supplies onto shelves, I saw something quickly pass by outside one of the broken windows. It was a fleeting movement, something huge and quick, which seemed like a strange combination. I stopped working and stared out the window. I stood there trying to see what was there when I noticed the same movement again, this time disappearing around the side of the building. It moved quickly, and it was higher than the window, so whatever it was must have been very tall, at least 7 or 8 feet. Its height was weird enough, but I swear I saw what looked like an arm hanging down too, dark-colored, but I couldn't tell exactly because it was still so dark outside. Then soon after, I was sure I heard someone rattling the entry door, so naturally I panicked and I drove the forklift as fast as I could towards the large open space where I didn't feel so vulnerable. I wanted to get away from those windows, just in case. But I also knew the noise of the machine would alert whoever it was, not only that I was in the building, but now they would know exactly where I was. I was really freaking out now, but telling myself it was probably just the same person who steals the tools. Weird to think that a thief was actually my best case scenario at this point. I waited for a while to see if there was any further movement or sound, but when no one came into the building, I realized it must have been one of my coworkers parking and entering the front door, the door I couldn't see from the warehouse. So sure enough, Before long, my coworker John walked into delivery from the front office. He looked barely awake and seemed to be heading to the break room for a cup of coffee. I tried to play cool and I asked if he needed any help with anything, but he said nothing and walked right by me like usual, not even looking up or saying hello. Odd, but honestly not that unusual for him. I was just happy that someone else had actually showed up and I wasn't there alone anymore. Well, we both got to work, with me continuing to sort supplies and him doing his usual straightening up the delivery area. Just like before, I kept finding myself staring out the broken windows, trying to catch another glimpse of whatever it was that I saw or thought I saw. Had to be nothing, right? It had to be my imagination getting the best of me. There's definitely no weird creature like that out there, I kept telling myself. After a few hours, I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, John was gone. I wasn't entirely sure where he had gone. He usually tells me, and the rules are for one person to always be on the floor, so I was a little freaked out that he was nowhere in sight. I called his name out a few times in case he was on the far side of the building, but no answer. Anyway, I kept it together, and I kept sorting supplies until I heard the door open again. It was John, standing in the back doorway, but then he ran right back outside. The look on his face told me instantly that something was wrong. He was clearly in a panic. This wasn't the same calm, cool John that I usually saw every day at work. He called out to me, sounding desperate for help, something about dogs and a creature outside the building. My heart skipped a beat when he said the word dog. I lost it. I instantly followed him outside, but I didn't see anything. Nothing was different from before, and it seemed like nothing was out there. But John kept calling for my help, and he sounded like he needed it badly. Like when you think someone has been attacked, or when they're in some kind of big trouble, like drowning or something. I didn't know what to think, but John sounded in serious trouble, so I ran out into the parking lot to help him. John was screaming about a dog thing, and that he needed help. He was staring off into the woods with the building behind him as if he thought something was out there. But boy, was he wrong. It wasn't out there. From where I stood, I was between John and the building. I could see that this dog creature was 20 steps behind him and walking towards him. Neither of them was looking back at me, and I'm not convinced they even knew I was there yet. From behind, the creature looked more dog-like than man in terms of the matted fur, but the thing was walking towards John on 2 legs, which was something my brain wasn't computing. And then the dog creature stopped and turned to look at me. It seemed to notice me, and then it did something that still makes my blood turn cold when I think about it. It opened its mouth and barked at me. Only it wasn't really a bark, it was screaming at me with a sound that I will never forget. It stared me straight in the eyes and snapped its mouth shut, gritting its fangs and then growling a low, guttural growl, something that seemed to rumble the earth. We stood there in a standstill, me staring at it staring at me. Was it waiting for me to make a move? Who knows? I wasn't even able to do anything but stand there watching it anyway. And then it spun around, and it ran. It ran past John without even pausing as it passed him, and it headed to the woods on the other side of the parking lot, the far side. It was like my brain couldn't process what was going on. It made no sense at all. All I could do was watch it run away. John was somehow more lucid than I was after the whole thing. I was confused. Why didn't it attack me, or attack him? But John wasn't in a state of mind to care about that. He didn't need to know why. He was just happy that it didn't happen. He kept reassuring me that it would be okay, telling me that it's gone now, and we were safe now. It was a total 180. He was taking care of me. I wanted to believe him, but it didn't make sense why it ran away like that. From what I was seeing, it totally had the advantage. There wasn't any good explanation for its retreat. It basically came down to my wondering if it just didn't want to kill us, or if it was scared of something we didn't know about or couldn't see. Maybe it just got caught up in the whole situation and didn't even mean to be there. Now, all I can do is wonder if this creature, or its tribe, if that exists, has anything to do with our broken windows and missing tools. The thought of an armed and dangerous group of dog creatures near the shop is enough to keep me up at night, and away from the night shift. Yes, that's true. I finally listened to my coworkers and stopped working the night shift. However, I never told them exactly why. John and I made a pact that we would never tell a soul about what happened to us. We're both afraid that they'll think we're crazy. So now it's been weeks, and the thing hasn't shown up again. I think it moved on, or it's just waiting for the next best opportunity. Interestingly, no more tools have disappeared either. I've also done a bit of research online, and it seems like dogman encounter stories are pretty common among the locals here, but you never seem to hear anyone mention them in person, and I've only seen anonymous postings online. It seems like people who encounter these things are really affected by the encounter, just like me. John, too. He and I don't really run into each other much, so I've no one to talk about it with. I've seriously thought about seeing a shrink, but I'm worried that they'll commit me. I don't even know if they're allowed to do that or if they have to keep our discussions private. I'm actually too scared to find out, but something is going to have to change soon.